This is DN Olo, and today I'm continuing the series where I reacted to videos in my watch and later playlist. Anyway, today I'm going to react to a video by Metatron. Now that, honestly, check out this channel. It's a pretty good channel. He makes a lot of very good videos and all that. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I can't remember whether or not I have seen this video before and all that. I might have seen this video before, but I am not very certain about it. But nevertheless, let's quickly learn a bit about the difference between Latin and Italian and all that. No, another thing about I might have started the video and all that. I mean, I did like 2 of the comments here, so I mean, as possible, I just took a look at the comments before yeah, before I started the video and whatnot. But yeah, let's go ahead and check out this video here and all that. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Well, actually, before we start, I think I better check something real quick here. Right. Well, without further ado, let's continue on with the video here. By the way, I'm gonna be honest here. No wonder if you can hear me if I were to put this on mute. I wonder if muting my computer affects the volume in any way. Well, rather, whether or not you can hear what I'm saying and all that. But yeah, anyway, if we get to like 100 subscribers, then I'll get a mic and all that. 100 subscribers isn't enough to monetize this channel, but it's a start. Somewhere between 100 and 200. If we get that many subscribers on here, then I'll go ahead and try to buy your mic instead of using the one of this computer and all that. Yeah, it's probably going to be a really cheap mic, and it probably won't arrive right away. And it's quite possible that it might get lost at the mail and all that, but we'll try to get a affordable mic if we get 100 subscribers and all that. Unless some unseen situation happens that would prevent me from getting a microphone and all that. Yeah, without any further ado, let's actually check out this video. Okay, so I've definitely not seen this video before, because I have not seen that title intro before, so yeah, I definitely have not seen this video before. Yeah, this is definitely one of his older videos, yeah, about 8 years old and all that. By the way, at the time I'm recording this, he actually uploaded a video today, that, so, if you want to check that out, and do that, and, check out a bunch of his other videos and all that. He makes good videos. Much better than the videos I make, that's for certain.
Latin. I've always been fascinated by this language.
This is definitely an early video. Yeah, definitely very old and all that. Yeah. Yeah, let's see. Okay. And let's see. Popular. Yeah, yeah, definitely one of his more popular videos. Yeah, and let's see, artist. How old is? Oh, oh, so he started as a StarCraft as a gaming channel or something like. Oh, oh, he really has been doing this for a long time. Yeah, 11 years. Wait a minute, it's 2025. 11, my 2014. He started in 2014. That's weird because huh? Yeah, I mean, 2014 is. I gotta say, I'm still getting used to the idea of, years like 2014 being 11 years ago. Oh my god. 2014. I mean, it makes sense, but it's still surprising. It's still kind of weird. It makes sense, but it's weird. Hmm. Guess something about getting old, I guess. So yeah, let's see. Hmm. So, yeah. 10 years, Yeah. Huh. Oh, a real mix of content here on in the older days of this channel. Yeah. Huh. Oh man, 1.2 thousand videos. So yeah, honestly, I'm pretty sure you will probably find a few videos of his that you like. And there's certainly so many that you're bound to find one you like. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, you can check out some of the his any of these videos here and all that, and these playlists. Yeah. Right.
Language, lingua latina. I think it's a beautiful language, and also it's a very important language because it is the mother of all Romance languages, such as Italian, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Romanian. In other words, if an Italian native speaker were to hear a person speaking in Latin, would the conversation be mutually intelligible, or would it sound like a completely different and foreign language? Or would that hypothetical Italian feel the parenthood of such language?
Oh man, oh, must be a terrible video when it comes to audio. I mean, yeah, we got my city audio and his very bad audio, and fighting each other to see which audio he can is worse. Yeah.
The true answer is a bit of everything. There are some words and some sentences that are completely different to modern Italian, and we will get to reason in a few moments. But there are other words that sound exactly the same if it wasn't for very minor changes, normally to the end of the words most of the times, but not always to the end of the words, and we will see some of these as well. So it really depends. Some words might sound very natural to an Italian, some words they might sound a little different but still perfectly recognizable, and other words, if you haven't studied it, you wouldn't understand a thing. But why Italian? Why choosing Italian, not Spanish, not French, not Romanian? Well, Italian is the second closest language to Latin, the first one being the Sardinian dialect. I don't think this should surprise us. Well, first of all, of course, Latin was born in Latium, so in the very heart of Italy or the Italic Peninsula. So we can understand why Italian is quite close to Latin, and it should not surprise us that Sardinian actually has kept more similarities with Latin because as Italian evolved, Sardinia, being an island and being detached from mainland, we could say did not approve certain changes, so to speak. Maintain
Kind of like how American English has more similarities with um, uh, early modern English than modern British English does and all that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, speaking of which, if you want to know more about the differences between the United States and Britain, a great YouTube channel to check out. I believe it's called Lost in the Pond. Yep, it is. Yeah, Lost in the Pond. Yeah, I think I'll show you. Yeah. Yeah, his. It is. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that's another great YouTube channel you could check out. Mm-hmm. Anyway,
Maintaining
let's
a
get on with it.
closer relationship to the mother language. But going back to Italian, so what are the actual differences between Latin and Italian? And as an Italian native speaker, how does Latin sound and feel to my ears? Well, of course, some pronunciation aside, and of course, we will have to deal with ecclesiastical Latin and classical Latin in a moment, very briefly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. That is a difference.
But pronunciation apart aside, the most evident changes are in grammar, Italian being more simple than Latin, as Latin is a highly inflected language having three distinct genders, seven noun cases, four verb conjugations, four verb principal parts, six tenses, third persons, three moods, two voices, two aspects, and two numbers. Nerf next patch, please. So I'm not saying Italian grammar is simple, it definitely isn't, although of course difficulty in a language really depends on your starting point, meaning that if you're Spanish, then most of the problems within Italian grammar will not be a problem at all, as they will be similar to your native tongue, whereas if you happen to be Chinese, then those grammar rules will make you hate our peninsula regardless of the wonderful pasta we are able to make. So, to answer that question, does Latin feel like a foreign language? No. Well, sometimes. Okay, let me.
Hmm. I wonder how similar Italian is to Latin, because English is very different from Anglo-Saxon. Of course, the English language has, gone through, many major changes throughout the world, throughout the ages. I believe much more than Italian has from Latin and all that, but yeah, honestly, I wonder, whether Latin to an Italian is similar to how a American would view Shakespearean English, also known as early modern English, or how a person, or whether it's more like the English spoken by a Chaucer or something like that. And I wonder, exactly how different and how unintelligible Latin is to an Italian. I mean, I think it's definitely, an Italian could definitely probably understand Latin much more than a English person could understand old English or Middle English and all that.
Let me explain this. There are some words, as I said, that are very, very similar and others aren't. So let's have a look at the list of these. I will read them first in Latin, then I'll give you the equivalent in Italian. Let's begin from words that actually are similar. For example, the word for museum in Latin is museum, museum. In Italian
Museum.
is museo. So you see that in this
Museo.
case, we have basically just cut the end, losing that sort of suffix that actually English kept, although in English you sort of modify the pronunciation, as in English you say museum,
Museum.
museum, whereas in Latin the pronunciation would be museum, u, u.
Museum.
Ecclesia, that's the word for church,
Ecclesia.
in Italian becomes chiesa. Of course, you have words.
Well, that's a bit different. Mm. Ecclesia. Chiesa. Chiesa. Mm. Yeah, I see where we get the word ecclesiastical from.
Words that come from this, such as ecclesiastical, we have that word in Italian as well, ecclesiastical. So So you will understand that this word sounds similar enough. So we slightly changed the word but kept it in compounds. Victoria. Now this one is interesting because in Italian the V becomes a V, same in ecclesiastical Latin. Ecclesiastical Latin is actually more similar in pronunciation to modern Italian, whereas classical Latin will differ a bit more. So I am actually using classical Latin here. So Victoria becomes Vittoria, and you will notice that CT becomes double T in modern Italian. This is a constant. It will always be like this. Pater, padre, mater, madre. So again, perfectly recognizable words. They just sound a bit different.
Yeah, you switch the T with the D, which, if you study, the etymology of words is, as you know, something that happens a lot. T's getting switched with D's and vice versa, and also, the modern Italian's spelling is kind of similar to how English people write the word center, while the Latin spelling is similar to how Americans like myself spell center. Hmm. Yeah, by the way, in case you didn't know, I'm actually American. I just have a bit of a speech impediment. I know that, so that's why my voice sounds peculiar. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But let's have a look at some words that don't sound like it. For example, bellum. Now, bellum means war. Modern Italian for war is
Mm-hmm.
guerra. Has nothing to do with it. So most Italians, if you just tell them the word bellum, unless they have studied Latin, they won't be able to understand you.
Oh, wow. mm. Good. I wonder if the Italian word is where we get the word guerrilla warfare and all that, since I believe the two words should have a similar spelling, I believe. Uh, yeah, I'm definitely familiar with Bellum, as he pronounced it.
Italians, if you just tell them the guerra, means war, don't sound like it. For example, bellum.
Yeah, he pronounced it Bellum. I guess English speakers, or at least the English speakers and would pronounce it Bellum and all that. Yeah, kind of like the antebellum South and all that. That phrase and term. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely more familiar with the Latin word than the Italian word and all that. And in fact, I think most English speakers are, and which makes sense after all. The English linguist likes to use Latin and Greek words for more, when people want to, sound more educated and sophisticated. Yeah, we use words that are of Latin or French or Greek origin and all that. We use. I mean, they're basically loan words and all that. Kind of like how Japanese people will use English words and all that because they see English words as hip and all that. Hip and cool and all that. Yeah.
Guerra has nothing to do with it. So most Italians, if you just tell them the word bellum, unless they have studied Latin, they won't be able to understand you. Although, again, interestingly enough, the stem of the word remains even in other modern Italian words, such as the word for warring, like warring states, which becomes belligerante in Italian, and a common word with English, bellicoso, which means aggressive or bellicose. Very curious one is the word for home. Now in Latin that one becomes domus. In Italian,
That's where we get the domain, and I think that's the root word of what it means.
becomes
Just like the Spanish people, as casa, and all that. That's
depending on where in Italy you're from. So what happened to that word? Well, the thing is that if we look at the etymology of the word casa in Italian, it actually is, or Spanish or Portuguese, I believe we all share that word, although we pronounce it slightly different, and I'll get to that point in a minute. But the origin comes from another Latin word, which is the exact same, casa. The thing is, though, that when the Romans used the word domus, they referred to citizens, Roman citizens' houses. Whereas when they use the word casa, they actually meant huts or sheds or shacks. And most of the times, ancient Romans would use those words for tribal houses of areas in the province or even enemy territory. So why did that become the common word in our modern languages? Most likely, but this is just my opinion as a linguist, so an educated guess, I suppose, I might be wrong, but so my idea is that most likely domus, as time progressed, became a word just to express the homes of rich people, whereas casa probably was used for smaller homes, which of course constituted the majority, and this is probably why most
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I'd probably agree with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
people considered casa as their own living quarters, and this is why probably this word became more popular. Now, as far as the pronunciation is concerned, just wanted to say a fun fact. In Italy, we know that in the south of Italy we pronounce it casa, whereas in the north of Italy it's pronounced casa. Now, I believe in Portuguese they stick to the z, so more similar to northern Italian pronunciation, whereas in Spanish, I think that not only it's closer to the southern ways of pronouncing, but it's actually stronger. So you've got casa, Spanish, casa, Southern Italian, casa, Northern Italian and Portuguese, and in some northwest regions in Italy, it actually becomes caja, but it's more of a dialect in that case. So lots of different ways to pronounce that word. Pick the one you like. Then there are other words that we can
Yeah, that's a funny image right there.
understand but we could misunderstand, meaning the word, for example, pugno. Now, GN in modern Italian and ecclesiastical Latin, it becomes a ñ sound, so an Italian would read it pugno rather than pugno. But in Latin, that word actually meant to fight, for example. Just to give you an example, pugnatum est, the battle raged. But in Italian, pugno actually means punch, and we use the word combattere for fighting. So that word used in such context would sound odd and just a little outdated or perhaps old-fashioned or very like ancient. So by now you might have understood, you might have noticed I'm rather talkative. So with all this, what I try to say is sometimes Latin sounds foreign or just different. As far as the feeling an Italian gets when he
So I guess kind of like Middle English and all that. Hmm. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I guess yeah, Latin would be kind of like the English equivalent of Middle English and all that. Hmm. Yeah.
he is Latin. Now, in my case, and I'd like to share my personal opinion, my personal experience, when I hear classical Latin, so the Latin used by the Romans, it feels powerful. It feels authoritative. It feels big, great, imposing. This is the feeling I get by adding those little words at those little suffixes at the end. For example, museum. It's just to say the word for river, modern Italian, fiume, Latin fluvius. But you see how us, this sort of sounds authoritative and powerful. When you move to ecclesiastical pronunciation,
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm of the same opinion here. Yeah, classical Latin definitely very authoritative and imperial, to say the least. Yeah, yeah, definitely a rather militaristic, conquering kind of feeling and all that. Mm-hmm.
though, considering the fact that now it's the official language of the Holy See and it's often used for liturgy. For some reasons, when I hear ecclesiastical Latin, it sort of sounds religious. So it still keeps some of the authority of classical Latin, but it's more towards the holiness sort of.
Yeah, more divine, and it's like it's definitely authoritative, but in a more graceful a way and all that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, more. Yeah. It's still definitely a good way to good authority, but in a more graceful and spiritual sense of authority. Mm. Yeah.
Situation. Of course, this must be a cultural filter, but that's the sort of feeling I get. Personally, I tend to prefer classical Latin. It sounds just stronger. Imperium. Now, personally, I think that that feeling of power that most Italians, and I think all the Italians I've spoken to, would agree with me. So I think the reason why Latin has such a powerful sound to it is because it was spread through the power of the Roman Republic. And that's how Latin became the dominant language and with time throughout the entire empire. And I believe that this is one of the reasons why it sort of evolved into a language that needed to show the authority and power through a certain selection of sounds and words that would suggest just that. Italian, on the other hand, is a musical language. It's a romantic language when well spoken. So Italian has lost that powerful authority, but it has gained a softer feel to it. Now, to compare these two, I'm now going to read a passage about the Roman Republic, similar, not the exact same words, but I will read it both in Latin and in Italian. We'll first read it in Latin, classical Latin, and then I will read it in Italian. I hope you enjoy it. Please let me know which one sounds more beautiful to you and which one would be your favorite as far as the sound is concerned. Senatus populusque Romanus, inter rem publicam Roma, quae saeculo sexto, evat parua media urbs, maior civitas in mari Mediterraneo facta est. Scriptores posteriores, inter quos Livius, rem publicam Romanorum, cum novissimus septe regum Romae, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, depulsut esset, condita esse scripserunt.
Mm. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of how a politician or a great leader would speak and all that. Yeah, definitely. Rather, definitely. Just the way it sounds, definitely sounds rather authority. A strong, political authority and all that. Yeah, yeah, political yeah, definitely rather political authority, it seems to, just comes from it. And that, rather than just straightforward and all that, kind of like, the BBC or pretty much any a news reporter or news anchor and all that, as well. Definitely rather clear, just sounding straight to the point, and form sounding as well. Hmm. Yeah, definitely clear formness to it.
Il Senato e il popolo romano. La Repubblica Romana fu il sistema di governo della città di Roma nel periodo compreso tra il 509 a.C. e il 27.
Okay, now,
Depulsut esset, condita esse scripserunt. Il Senato e il popolo romano. La Repubblica Romana fu il sistema di governo della città di Roma nel periodo compreso tra il 509 a.C. e il 27 a.C., quando l'urbe fu governata da un'oligarchia repubblicana. Essa nacque a seguito di contrasti interni che portarono alla fine della supremazia della componente etrusca sulla città.
hmm. Well, I gotta say, the talent definitely sounds quite musical and all that. Slight poetic sound to it and all that. I mean, not very poetic, but definitely just has a slight poetic sound to it. Kind of like it's kind of like just a romanticized retelling of a stroke event or something like that. Yeah, yeah, definitely kind of rather poetic way of speaking and all that. Rather, yeah, yeah, rather poetic and musical. Yeah. Mm. I wonder if he's gonna say anything else before this video is over.
Alright then, I hope that you enjoyed this linguistic video. If you did, please remember thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content from the Metatron. Remember that I upload daily, so I will see you tomorrow. Be waiting for you. Yes, you. Yes, you. I'm talking to you. With a red t-shirt, I can see you. Yeah. Stop looking at your
I'm
t-shirt. Yeah,
great.
I exactly mean you. Come tomorrow, okay? Waiting for you. And remember, the Metatron, the spread his wings. Goodbye.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Ah. Italian sounds cultured. Latin sounds like law. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Pretty good way to say it. Hmm. Decades ago, my first two trips to Italy, I had 6 and 8 years of Latin under my belt, respectively, and 3 years of French, but approximately 15 to 20 minutes of Italian. When I ran into a vendor that didn't speak English, I tried tossing Latin at them, and about 90% of the time, we were able to have broken conversations that essentially allowed for communication. It made for a much easier time, but I definitely received quite a few. Why is there a American speaking Latin at me? Looks. Yeah, that is definitely a rather unusual sight right there. Whenever I ran into a Latin word that was just too different from Italian, I would fall back on French and try to construct what the Italian word might possibly be. And honestly, that just sounds like a rather fun challenge right there. Honestly, I kind of would want to try that. Although, I probably, I would, I might fail at it a bit. Hmm. Since I know very little Latin and all that, and I've only have one no, only studied French for one year, a few years ago. So, yeah, we're pretty rusty with the very rusty with the French as well, and definitely not fluent in French at all, and all that, and Latin, just a handful of words that and all that. Hmm. Both languages are beautiful in a different way. Italian sounds more poetic, while Latin sounds more imperial, and yes, among the Romance languages, Italian is the one that looks closest to Italian. I speak Spanish and English. During my vacation in Italy, I carried an Italian for Traveler book. I was able to communicate in Italian for a month. Italian and Spanish are similar languages in many ways. Italy has been my favorite destination in the world. Italian sounds musical and sweet. Latin, powerful and glorious. I'm a Dutch guy who learned some Latin in school and recently started learning Italian on Duolingo. Having learned Latin in school makes learning Italian easier for me since I'm already used to the difference in grammar between Romance and Germanic languages. But to say one language sounds more beautiful than the other isn't really something hearing from my perspective. To me, Latin sounds more formal and official, and Italian sounds more relaxed and modern, if that makes any sense. And by the way, your English is absolutely flawless. Mhm. Standard Italian is much gentler, happier, friendlier. Classical Latin is authoritarian, powerful, and kind, dominating. If Latin were the father of Romance languages, then Italian would be the favorable firstborn son. Mm-hmm. oh, uh, um, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I see. That's Italian and all that. Ah. No wonder I couldn't figure out whether it was French or Spanish. It was Italian. That's what it was. But for the Italian version, in 2002, my wife and I went to Rome from Texas to get a wedding blessed. Nobody spoke English, but I was delighted to discover I could converse with locals using my Texas Spanish. I still get a little emotional hearing Italian being spoken. We really had a great trip once we started using Spanish. Mm-hmm. Too long to read. Anyway, I guess that's all for today. Do like, comment, and subscribe, and goodbye for now.